She cooked him dinner. She took him on family vacations. She treated him like her own son. And one ordinary morning, he walked into her home and ended her life. For 23 years, he sat across from her daughter at restaurants, hugged her at parties, looked her straight in the eyes and said, "I'm so sorry about your mom." Nobody knew. Nobody even suspected. And the worst part? He almost got away with it. This is the story of a mother who opened her heart to the wrong person. A husband who spent 16 years under suspicion for a crime he didn't commit. A daughter who unknowingly shared laughs with the man who took everything from her. And a single water bottle that brought it all crashing down. And I need to warn you right now, this case has more twists than anything you've seen before. So if you're someone who believes that the truth always finds a way, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications because you don't want to miss what comes next. Drop a like on this video because stories like this one deserve to be heard by everyone. Now let me take you back to where it all started. It was May 2nd, 2001, a Wednesday. Just another beautiful spring morning on Drummond Avenue, a quiet, tree-lined street in Chevy Chase, Maryland. This was the kind of neighborhood where nothing bad ever happened. White picket fences, manicured lawns, families who waved to each other on their way to work. One of the lowest crime rates in the entire country. The kind of place where you didn't just feel safe, you assumed you were. Leslie Prier lived in a red brick home on the street with her husband Carl, who everyone called Sandy. They had been married for almost 30 years. Their daughter Lauren, now 23, had grown up in this house but was away at university. To everyone who knew her, Leslie was the kind of woman who made the world a little warmer just by being in it. Beautiful, generous, magnetic. The type of mother who bragged about her daughter all day long at work. The type of neighbor who always had a kind word. The type of wife who stuck by her husband through everything. That morning, Sandy kissed Leslie goodbye around 7:45 and headed off to work. She was standing at the door in the early light, getting ready for her own day. She worked as an account executive at Specialties Incorporated, a small advertising agency in Washington, D.C. Her shift started at 10. The commute was about an hour by bus, so she had a little time. Sandy waved goodbye. A neighbor even saw him leave, saw someone wave from the window. That was the last time anyone saw Leslie alive. At 10:15, Leslie's boss, Brett, noticed her desk was empty. By 10:30, he was pacing. This wasn't like Leslie. She was the most reliable person he knew. Never late, never absent without calling. He asked the front desk to call the house. No answer. He called Leslie's daughter Lauren at university. She had no idea where her mother was. Then he called Sandy. "She's not here," Brett told him. "That's concerning, Brett," Sandy replied, and you could hear it in his voice. Something was wrong. Sandy left his office immediately. Brett did the same. They both raced toward Drummond Avenue, arriving around 11:35. Brett got there first. He knocked on the front door. No answer. No movement through the windows. Just silence. When Sandy pulled up moments later, he had his house key ready. But he didn't need it. The front door was already unlocked. Together, the two men stepped inside. And what they walked into changed everything. There was blood in the foyer. Not a little, a lot. Smeared across the walls, splattered on the baseboards. A dark red pool had congealed near the entrance. A small table was flipped over into the dining room. A rug had been dragged from its place. And stuck to the floor, glued there by dried blood, was a pizza delivery flyer. Just a small scrap of paper. But that detail, that tiny piece of evidence, would haunt this investigation for years. Brett froze. "Oh my God," he whispered. "We need to call the police." Sandy didn't wait. He started running through the house calling Leslie's name. Upstairs, downstairs, room to room. He found their dog locked in the basement, whimpering, but no sign of Leslie. He checked the master bedroom from the doorway. Nothing seemed out of place. He didn't check the bathrooms. He came back downstairs, and Brett was already on the phone with 911. "There's blood in the foyer," Brett told the dispatcher. "It looks like something possibly happened. The husband's looking around." The dispatcher told him to step outside. "Don't touch anything. Wait for officers." They grabbed the dog and went out to the lawn. About 7 minutes later, a patrol car pulled up. The officers drew their weapons and entered the house. 5 minutes, maybe 10. That's how long it took. Then Officer Barnett walked back outside. His face said everything before his mouth did. "Mr. Prier, sir, your wife is dead." Sandy broke. Right there on his own front lawn, in the middle of a perfect spring day, his whole world collapsed. Upstairs in the master bathroom, officers had found Leslie's body. She was lying face down in the shower stall, her legs sticking out. A shallow puddle of water beneath her. She had been left there by whoever did this to her. But here is the thing that made this case so terrifying from the very beginning. There was no sign of forced entry, no broken windows, no kicked-in doors, nothing stolen, nothing missing. Whoever did this didn't break in. They were let in. Leslie opened that door for her killer. She knew him, she trusted him, and he repaid that trust with violence that even seasoned investigators struggled to describe. The autopsy came back 2 days later and erased any hope that this might have been an accident. Leslie had 7 deep lacerations on her head. The wounds matched the sharp corners of the baseboard molding in the foyer. Her attacker had knocked her to the ground and slammed her head into the floor again and again. There were bruises on her arms and torso from a violent struggle. Hemorrhaging around her neck confirmed she had been manually strangled. The small bone at the base of her throat was broken, meaning she was still alive when the choking began. This wasn't a quick death. Leslie fought. She fought hard. And in that fight, she scratched her killer. She dug her nails into his skin and tore away pieces of him. Tiny fragments of flesh that would sit in an evidence bag for over 2 decades, waiting. After strangling her in the foyer, the killer dragged Leslie's body up the stairs and into the master bathroom. He placed her in the shower and turned on scalding hot water, trying to wash away every trace of himself. The water was so hot it left burns on her skin. Then he went back downstairs and began cleaning. He wiped blood from the walls. He scrubbed the floor near the stairs. He cleaned the kitchen sink, the downstairs bathroom, the door handles. But here is what's chilling. Forensic analysts later discovered that the cleaning products he used were not found anywhere in the house. He brought them with him. He came prepared. And yet, for all his preparation, he missed things. Blood on the baseboard beneath the dining room window, a drop in the kitchen doorway, a smear on the inside of the back door, 3 spots. 3 pieces of his own blood, mixed with Leslie's, left behind in his panic to get out. Because investigators believe that's exactly what happened. Sandy and Brett arrived at 11:35. The killer may have still been inside. He might have heard them at the front door, panicked, tried to escape through the dining room window, left a blood drop on the baseboard. Realized that wouldn't work, rushed through the kitchen, left another drop in the doorway, and finally pushed through the back door to the garden, smearing his blood on the handle as he fled. He got away, but he didn't get away clean. And the woman he left behind had already made sure of that with her own fingernails. Now here is where this case takes a turn that will make your blood boil. Because instead of chasing the unknown man whose DNA was all over that crime scene, detectives turned their full attention to the one person who had nothing to do with it: the husband. The grieving, broken, innocent husband. In any case like this, investigators always look at the spouse first. And Sandy Prier was no exception. On the surface, there were things that raised eyebrows. Sandy had searched the house but hadn't checked the bathrooms where Leslie's body was found. The blood on the floor had dried enough for a pizza flyer to stick to it, which some analysts argued meant Leslie could have been harmed earlier than Sandy's timeline suggested. And when investigators looked into the marriage, they found it wasn't perfect. Leslie had struggled with drinking. Sandy admitted there were difficult nights. He once grabbed her by the shoulders during an argument and she hit a wall. He said he immediately felt horrible and never let it happen again. But detectives seized on every crack. 22 days after Leslie's death, they brought Sandy in for questioning. And what followed was one of the most aggressive interrogations you'll ever hear. "We all know who's responsible," the detective told him. "It's just a matter of getting to the truth. Give us a break. Give yourself a break. It's got to be a living nightmare. What are you getting? 1-2 hours of sleep a night? How long can you keep your job like this? Your family's wondering. Everybody's wondering. Come on, Sandy." Sandy sat there, devastated, exhausted, grieving, and being told by the people who were supposed to find his wife's killer that he was the killer. He asked for a lawyer. He said he was innocent. He said it over and over. "You got the wrong guy." But police didn't stop. They brought him back weeks later under the pretense of picking up seized belongings. Instead, they put him in an interrogation room again. They pressured him for hours. They told him the evidence pointed to him. They told him to do the right thing for Lauren. They even used his own daughter's grief as leverage. "It would be a travesty for Lauren to go through the rest of her life trying to figure out what happened," the detective said. "She's a forgiving person." Sandy's response was quiet but firm. "I would love to respond to these questions, but my attorney said not to." They pushed harder. Sandy called his lawyer during the interrogation. The lawyer told him to stop talking. The detective smirked. Saved by the bell. Sandy stood up. "Am I allowed to walk out that door?" "Absolutely." "Then I prefer to walk." And he did. But the suspicion didn't walk out with him. It followed him everywhere. For years, even some family members had doubts. Even Lauren, his own daughter, admitted that for one brief second, one terrible moment, she wondered. But then she thought about who her father really was. A man who had never once raised a hand to her or her mother. A man who built little shelters in the backyard for animals. A man whose heart was too big, not too violent. Sandy even took a polygraph test. He failed it. And that result, unreliable as polygraphs are, poured gasoline on a fire that was already burning. The community whispered. The newspapers implied. And Sandy lived under that cloud for the rest of his life. If you're watching this right now and cases like this fascinate you, we've covered dozens of cold cases just like this one. Innocent people wrongly suspected. Killers hiding in plain sight. Justice that took decades. You'll find links to all of them in the description below. Go check them out after this video. But for now, stay with me, because what happens next in this case is something nobody saw coming. Then, months after the murder, the DNA results came back from the lab, and everything changed. Or at least, it should have. The DNA found under Leslie's fingernails, the skin she had clawed from her attacker, belonged to an unknown male, not Sandy. The blood found in 3 locations throughout the house, under the dining room baseboard, in the kitchen doorway, on the back door, all from the same unknown man, not Sandy. Carl Sandy. Prier was scientifically, definitively, completely innocent. But here's the heartbreaking truth. Even after the DNA cleared him, suspicion lingered. People still whispered, maybe he hired someone. Maybe there was an accomplice. The stain on his name never fully washed away. Detectives collected DNA from everyone close to Leslie, 18 to 24 men. Friends, neighbors, co-workers, family members. Every single one was excluded. The unknown male wasn't in any database, wasn't in any system, had never been arrested for anything serious enough to require a DNA sample. The case had hit a wall, and slowly, painfully, it went cold. For the next 21 years, Leslie Prier's murder file gathered dust. Every decade or so, new detectives would pick it up, review it, chase a lead, and come up empty. In 2010, Lauren mentioned a neighbor who had always been oddly flirty with her mother. "Oh, I see where you get your good looks from," he used to say. Detectives tracked him down, tested his DNA, not a match. Another dead end, another door slammed shut. Lauren stayed in contact with the police, hoping, waiting, but nothing ever came. And then, in 2017, Sandy Prier died. His obituary said he never recovered from the loss of his wife. Lauren would later say it more simply. He died of a broken heart. He went to his grave with people still thinking he might have done it. He never got to clear his name, never got to see justice, never got to know who walked into his home that May morning and took the love of his life away from him. That fact alone is enough to make you want to scream. But this story isn't over. Because while Sandy was gone, science was catching up. And the killer, the man who thought he had gotten away with it, had no idea what was coming. In 2022, 21 years after the murder, the Montgomery County Police Department assembled a cold case unit. 2 female detectives took over the investigation. They pulled out the old files, the evidence bags, the DNA samples that had been preserved all those years. And they decided to try something that had never been done before in the state of Maryland: genetic genealogy. This technique had already changed the game in criminal investigations across the country. It was the same method that caught the Golden State Killer after decades of terror. The way it works is both simple and extraordinary. You take an unknown DNA sample and run it through public genealogy databases, the kind regular people use to trace their family trees. Almost every time, at least one distant relative pops up. From there, experts build family trees, trace branches, narrow down candidates by age, location, and connection to the case. In September 2022, investigators submitted the preserved DNA from under Leslie's fingernails to a company called Oram Incorporated. The lab conducted forensic-grade genome sequencing. It was the first time this technology had been used in Maryland history. And it worked. The lab identified shared genetic markers with an individual living in Romania, a distant relative of the killer, someone who had innocently submitted their DNA to a commercial database to research their ancestry. Someone who had no idea they had just cracked open a 21-year-old cold case from across the ocean. From that match in Romania, investigators began building a family tree, branch by branch, name by name. It took 2 painstaking years of genealogical research, tracing bloodlines across continents, narrowing down hundreds of possibilities. And then, one day in 2024, one of the detectives found a name in the family tree that made her yell across the room. Gleigor. Her partner looked up. They had seen that name before, in the original case file. They pulled the old records. And there it was. In January 2002, just 9 months after the murder, a neighbor had called in a tip. The neighbor said they suspected a young man named Eugene Gleigor might be connected to Leslie Prier's death. The tip noted that police had frequently visited the Gleigor household for noise complaints, underage drinking, and drug use. Eugene had been connected to the Prier family through his relationship with their daughter. But the original investigators never followed up. Eugene was never questioned, never asked for a DNA sample, never even spoken to. The tip sat in the file, buried under paperwork, for 22 years. If they had taken his DNA in 2002, this case would have been solved in weeks. Instead, it took more than 2 decades, and a man died with suspicion hanging over his name. But now, finally, they had a lead, and this time, they weren't going to let it slip away. Eugene Gleigor was 44 years old in 2024, living a comfortable life in the trendy U Street corridor of Washington, D.C. He worked as an account executive for a company that sold surveillance equipment. Ironic, considering he was about to become the one being surveilled. On paper, Eugene looked like a success story. He had gotten sober after years of alcohol abuse. He attended recovery meetings, recommended self-help books to coworkers, donated to charity. Friends described him as warm, generous, zen. He went to concerts, dined at upscale restaurants, traveled to Europe regularly. Nobody in his circle would have guessed that behind that polished exterior lived a man carrying the darkest possible secret. But not everyone was fooled. One former coworker told reporters that Eugene's calm exterior masked a bad temper and a superiority complex. "Some people are receptive and warm," the coworker said. "He does that at first when he meets everybody. But then he's a giant condescending person." One of his ex-wives had filed for a protection order, alleging he punched walls and threw objects during arguments. His own brother had texted Lauren Prier in 2021, telling her he was afraid Eugene was going to hurt him. And then there was Eugene's past. As a teenager, he had been arrested for weapons possession, theft, and driving under the influence. He was listed as a suspect in multiple residential burglaries. He had even matched the description of a young man who attacked a woman on a bike path near Bethesda's Chevy Chase High School. Lauren herself had gone to the police station to defend him back then, insisting he was harmless. But none of those charges ever required a DNA sample. And that's why Eugene Gleigor had been invisible for 23 years. Now detectives needed his DNA to confirm what the genealogy was telling them. But they couldn't just walk up and ask. If Eugene knew he was a suspect, he might run. He traveled internationally. He had the means to disappear, so they came up with a plan. On June 9, 2024, Eugene landed at Dulles International Airport after a trip to Europe. Under the guise of a routine secondary screening, a customs officer pulled him aside. They led him into a small room. On the table sat several plastic water bottles. Eugene grabbed one, drank it casually while answering a few standard questions and filling out a form. When they told him he was free to go, he tossed the empty bottle in the trash and walked out. He had no idea the detectives were watching on surveillance monitors. The moment he was gone, an investigator moved in, pulled the bottle from the trash, bagged it, and sent it to the lab that same day with a request to rush the results. By Friday, the results were in. The DNA on that water bottle was a perfect match to the DNA found under Leslie Prier's fingernails and in the blood at 3 locations throughout her home 23 years earlier. The man Leslie had scratched while fighting for her life. The man whose flesh had been trapped under her nails. The man whose blood she had drawn in her final desperate moments. It was Eugene Gleigor. 9 days later, on June 18, 2024, a U.S. Marshal task force approached Eugene outside his D.C. apartment. He was sipping coffee and scrolling through his phone. An ordinary morning, just like the one he had shattered 23 years before. They put him in handcuffs and brought him to the station. About 2 hours later, he was sitting in an interrogation room, facing 2 cold case detectives who had spent years hunting for him. The interrogation lasted 24 minutes, and every second of it was a performance. Eugene walked in playing the victim. He complained about his wrists hurting from the handcuffs. He said he had heartburn. He asked for water. He acted confused, bewildered, like a man who had absolutely no idea why he was there. The detectives started slow. They asked about his relationship with Lauren, about her family, about whether he had ever been in the Prier home. Eugene answered carefully, minimizing everything. They dated in high school, he said, maybe 1994 to 1997. He spent some time at her house, sure, but he wouldn't say they were close. He claimed he found out about Leslie's death when Lauren walked into a restaurant where he was working and told him. He said he reached out to send his regards. That was it. Then, the detectives tightened the noose. From the crime scene, we have DNA from the person who was there when Leslie died, the detective told him. And there's another DNA profile that was picked up. Your name was in the file, but they never reached out to you. So we wanted to find out if there was any situation where you could have been at the house. Eugene shifted in his seat. I'm a little confused, he said. Why not just call me and ask me to come in? Why have marshals arrest me? Because there's a little more to it than what we've told you so far. Could you tell me? We're getting there. I'm trying to give you an opportunity to be forthcoming. That's when Eugene said it. The words that told the detectives everything they needed to know. I feel very trapped here. Well, the detective replied, you're under arrest, so you should feel trapped. Eugene asked for a lawyer. The detective said that was fine, but they weren't going to ask more questions. They were just going to tell him some things. From the crime scene, the DNA that was taken, we actually have a sample of your DNA, and it was compared to the crime scene DNA, and it matched. So we know you were there when Leslie died. Silence. But I never gave a sample of DNA, Eugene stammered. That's correct. We obtained a sample from a discarded water bottle that you drank out of. And there it was. 23 years of hiding, of pretending, of looking Lauren Prier in the eyes and saying, I'm so sorry about your mom. All of it came down to a single water bottle tossed in an airport trash can. I don't know what to say, Eugene whispered. I have no recollection. I have no memory. What followed was one of the most transparent performances ever recorded in an interrogation room. Eugene tried to cry. His voice shook. His hands trembled. He put on every appearance of a man falling apart. But the detective noticed something. There's no tears coming out of your face. Eugene fired back immediately. I'm very dry right now. I'm parched. I'm dehydrated. You can probably see my eyes are bloodshot. The detective didn't flinch. This seems a little put on. Are you kidding me? Eugene exploded. Are you kidding me? You're so full of it. This is the police. In your eyes, it's guilty until proven innocent. Well, honey, the detective said calmly, your DNA was in the crime scene. That's why. That line. That single, devastating line. It hung in the air like a verdict. Eugene cycled through every emotion. Fake tears, outrage, self-pity. He talked about his recovery from alcohol, his difficult childhood, his struggles. He said he couldn't remember anything. He said this over and over. I don't remember. I don't recall. I have no recollection. But never, until the detective pointed it out, did he simply say, I didn't do it. You keep saying you don't remember, the detective told him. But if somebody was not involved, it would be an adamant, I didn't do this. Only then did Eugene change his script. I definitely didn't do it, he said. But by that point, the words sounded hollow, rehearsed, like a man who had just been coached by his own interrogator on what an innocent person would say. The detective delivered one final line that cut through everything. The only person who knows what happened is Leslie, and she can't tell us. The interview ended. Eugene was charged with first-degree murder. When Detective Tara called Lauren Prier that day, she told her to sit down and get a glass of water. Do you know a Eugene Gleigor? The detective asked. Lauren couldn't breathe. He's the one who killed your mom. 23 years. Lauren had waited 23 years for that phone call. She had always imagined it would bring relief, and it did, but it also brought something she never expected. Betrayal. A betrayal so deep it's almost impossible to comprehend. She remembered Eugene at her family's dinner table. She remembered him on beach vacations with her parents. She remembered game nights, holidays, lazy afternoons. She remembered her mother cooking for him. She remembered how her mom welcomed him into their lives because that's the kind of person Leslie was. She opened her door and her heart to the people her daughter loved. And she remembered, years after the murder, bumping into Eugene and telling him what had happened to her mother. And Eugene hugging her and saying quietly, I'm so sorry. He looked her in the eyes, knowing what he had done, knowing he had taken her mother away, and he hugged her. It didn't seem weird, Lauren said later. And how you can look somebody in the eye, knowing that you committed this crime, and act like nothing happened, is pretty unreal. But there was one person who had always seen through the mask. Sandy, Lauren's father. The man the whole world suspected. He had told Lauren more than once over the years. There's something off about that boy. Lauren had always brushed it off. She thought her father was being overprotective, paranoid even. But Sandy was right. He was right about Eugene from the very beginning, and he never lived to hear those words proven true. Lauren was present at Eugene's first court appearance, supported by friends she and Eugene had once shared. She wanted to see him in shackles. She wanted him to know she was there. In May 2025, Eugene Gleigor, now 45 years old, pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. The plea meant he admitted to taking Leslie's life, but that prosecutors would not need to prove premeditation. A trial would have been brutal. Lauren would have had to sit through crime scene photos, autopsy details, and relive the worst moments of her life. She chose resolution over spectacle. She chose certainty over risk. At the sentencing hearing, Lauren finally stood face to face with the man who had murdered her mother, the man she had once loved. Maryland doesn't allow cameras in the courtroom, but the audio recordings captured every word. "You took my angel," Lauren told him. "We let you into our lives. A monster arrived right at the front door. Someone we trusted and considered a friend. You're a monster. A wolf in sheep's clothing." She paused, and then she said the words that mattered most. "You almost got away with it. And by the grace of God and prayer, my mother's killer was caught. Guess what? My family and friends are still here. I'm still here." Eugene spoke too. He expressed what he called his deepest regret, shame, and remorse. He said he was sorry for the devastating tragedy he caused, but he never said why. Lauren described hearing his voice as horrifying, like listening to something dark and inhuman. Every time he said her name or her mother's name, something inside her wanted to scream. The judge sentenced Eugene to 30 years, suspended all but 22, with 5 years of supervised probation upon release. He'll be almost 70 when he gets out. The prosecutor read a statement that silenced the courtroom. Sandy Prier was sentenced to life without his loving wife and his best friend. Sandy died with a cloud of suspicion hanging over his head. Lauren was sentenced to life without her mother and dearest friend, a sentence of pain and sorrow she will carry as long as she lives. To this day, no one knows why Eugene Gleigor walked into that house on May 2, 2001 and took the life of a woman who had been nothing but kind to him. He has never given a motive, not to the police, not to the court, not to Lauren. Detectives believe the most likely explanation is a burglary gone wrong. Eugene had a history of breaking into homes. He knew the Prier house inside and out. He knew they often left the back door unlocked. Maybe he assumed no one would be home. Maybe he knocked on the front door, and Leslie, recognizing a familiar face, let him in without hesitation. And maybe, when she saw what he was doing, when she realized why he was really there, he panicked. She knew his name, his face, his address. She would have gone straight to the police. And so he did the unthinkable. But even that theory has holes. If he came to steal, why was nothing taken? If he planned this, why didn't he bring a weapon? If it was spontaneous, why did he bring cleaning supplies? The truth is locked inside the mind of one man, and he has chosen to keep it there. But here's what we do know. Leslie Prier did not die quietly. She did not go without a fight. In her final moments, she clawed at the man taking her life and tore away pieces of his skin, pieces that would sit in an evidence bag for 23 years until science finally caught up with a killer who thought time was on his side. And Sandy Prier, the man who loved her, the man who was wrongly suspected, the man who lived under a cloud of suspicion until the day he died, he was right all along. Years before anyone else, Sandy had looked at his daughter and said, "There's something off about that boy." He never got to hear those words proven true. This case went down in history as the first in Maryland to be solved through genetic genealogy, a technique that has since helped crack hundreds of cold cases across the country. And it happened because of 3 extraordinary women: Lauren Prier, who never stopped believing, and 2 cold case detectives who went to the ends of the earth to bring a killer out of the shadows. Lauren keeps a photograph of her parents in her guest bedroom. For years, she would look at it and whisper a promise. "One day, I'm going to get this solved." And now she could look at that picture and say something different. We got justice. 23 years. That's how long a monster hid in plain sight. But the truth has a way of finding you. No matter how long it takes, no matter how far you run, no matter how many people you fool, one day, it catches up. And sometimes, all it takes is a single water bottle. Now, I want to hear from you. If Sandy had lived just a few more years, he would have seen his name cleared and the real killer brought to justice. How do you think his life would have been different? And here's something that still haunts me about this case. Eugene showed up at restaurants, at gatherings, at a memorial service, and looked Lauren right in the face for over 2 decades knowing what he had done. What kind of person can do that? And finally, the one question that may never be answered. Why? Why did Eugene Gleigor walk into that house and take the life of a woman who treated him like family? Drop your thoughts below. I read every single comment, and if this story moved you, if it made you feel something, then do me one favor. Hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this story. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel because we bring you cases like this every single week. Cases that will make you think, make you feel, and remind you that no matter how long it takes, justice has a way of finding its way home. I'll see you in the next one.